Today is week 4 of the workshops, and this is the second lecture talking about agile project management and using GitHub project boards to use some of these methodologies. And today is going to build on what I talked about last week. It's completely separate, it's completely independent. But if you didn't have a chance to participate in last week, or you haven't watched the video, if you go to the website that I posted in the chat, I'll repost that again for those who haven't came in later. There's a link to the video down here. If you just go here, I always post the video here. So I've got the slides from last week and the video lecture. So you can get the philosophy about Agile from that. A few logistics here, as usual. Please feel free to jump on the chat and answer everyone's questions. I will try to glance over at the chat, but typically I really hop on there at the end once I've finished talking. So the extent to which you can answer each other's questions and have your own side discussions, that's really perfect for me. And then after the lecture, I will stay on and answer everyone's questions as long as you want. Well, for a half hour. Usually that's plenty. Okay, so intro to Scrum. If you have ever Googled Scrum, you know, Googled Agile or talked with people who are work in software development, you would have heard about Scrum. Pretty much nowadays, in fact, when people talk about Agile, it's almost synonymous with Scrum. Back in 2001, when these sort of people, visionaries who were thinking about how teams can work better together to create better software, work more, efficiently, more robustly, all those great things. There were a whole lot of different methodologies there. There were a lot of different people there. And over the last 20 years, in kind of a Darwinian system, I suppose, Scrum has really come out as the big one. And my friends who work in software development, as I said last week, everyone uses some version of Scrum. Now, how fastidious they are in that depends, but pretty much everyone uses certain key features that I'll talk about in a moment. Before I go on, this lecture is going to give you an introduction, and then we're going to have a practical session. I'll show you how I ran a mini Scrum for myself. It wasn't with a team, but it had a lot of the features of Scrum using the project boards. And this will just show you how you can use the project board for the sort of 90% of the Scrum. Missing out the check-in part, you'll see, because I was working solo, but it's a good way to learn. So, and because I just have a little bit to time, I'm really going to focus on the basics, but I think this is really good when you start learning. Like when I started learning about this, watch these videos, it's definitely information overload. I was like, wow, that's too hard. But if you break the problem apart and you start learning it, start small, it's actually really easy. I put some really good intro links here. This book, you don't have to buy it, but if you wanted to buy something, you could. It's like a 40-page book. You definitely get through it fast, and that'll give you the basics. And then I really liked this video course. If you have if you're have a link through a university, you can get it, but you can also watch it through a 10-day trial. And then there's tons and tons of videos on YouTube. Here's just a few that I thought were nice. So I mentioned this last week, but I want to clarify again, like what kind of projects we're talking about when we're managing this. And these are big, complex projects. Scrum is especially good when you have a diverse team, people with lots of different roles on the team. So for us, this could be a manuscript with different people, a large report, a complex model, software package, software application. Those kinds of projects are generally what we're talking about. Scrum is known as a team framework, and it is known for creating teams that really learn fast and really get into a really good flow and a groove, and that's what the framework is about. But you can also do it solo. You just don't have the getting into a team groove, but you do get in the into the learning cycles. So when we think about Agile here, this is definitely an application of Agile. It has all of those 4 features of Agile thinking about how to organize teams and how to organize projects. You'll see it has all of these. And this one up here is a really important feature of Scrum, that orange one, iterative. And as I talked about last week, it's this idea that as we are developing something, and this is idea that actually came from industrial manufacturing, it's this idea of iterative cycles of learning, of work and learning. So you plan what you're going to do, you do it, you talk about it, you improve things, and then you do another cycle. And so you do these short iterations of work. Nowadays in the software industry, the iteration that pretty much most people use is 2 weeks. Now, we don't do software development, although we do, depending on the project, maybe you are doing some software development, but it's not the same as in the software industry. So the length of your cycles may be different, but it's definitely not 6 months. Okay, it's not a month. That's okay, month at the maximum, because if you do these cycles too long, then you're not learning and you're not improving and you're not being able to adapt, and so you're really bogging down your workflow. So we have these ideas that I talked about last week with Agile and all these 3 components, and I showed you that cycle there. But that's nice. How do you really do it? And how is it that in the software industry that this has become ubiquitous? Do they spend hours and hours, everybody training and training up the whole team? No, that's not really practical. I mean, it's a great idea, but in the real world, that would be hard to actually implement. Lots of people are coming in and out, teams are changing around. So as I said, the framework that has really spread throughout the industry is this idea of, it's called Scrum, and it's a lightweight framework for doing that Agile methodology. What does lightweight mean? So when you hear that term lightweight, it means that the ideas are really simple and it's actually easy to apply. Like you don't have to study a big book to do it. Talking with my friends, they say most people learn it on the job. You do have to have your person who's organizing and kind of teaching people, but it's actually quite easy to do and learn. The key thing is these cycles, and we're going to have certain activities in these cycles. So this is a picture of the Scrum framework, and it basically has these elements. I'm going to use the jargon they use so that if you go onto YouTube and stuff, you're going to know what they're talking about. But you're going to have to translate in your head a little bit what these terms mean to you. So for example, product backlog. So product backlog is, you have some, let's say, manuscript you're working on, and then you have all the sort of things that need to be done for that manuscript. So you're going to plan out your work, but you're not going to plan every single detail. You're going to order it, and things that are coming up soon are going to have more detail, and then things that are later, they're going to be a little rougher, like, okay, work on the, write the discussion, right? That's coming towards the end, or polish the references, that's coming towards the end. So you have this. These are things that everything that needs to be done. And then we're now going to plan an increment of work. So we're going to plan 2 weeks of work. So we can't do everything. And we want, at the end of this 2 weeks of work, to have what's called a minimal working product. We want to be able to show something. So obviously in our manuscript, we're not going to have the whole manuscript done. Or whatever it is you're developing. Rather, you pick something that, yeah, we could do that. That's a bit of work we could do in 2 weeks. And how much you can get done is going to totally depend on your team, right? Like if all the team members are working on 3 different projects, well, you're going to get done less in those 2 weeks than if you have 7 team members who all work full time on this project. So this is really how much you can get done. Depends on your team, but your team has to think about that and be able to pick a set of tasks that you can get done. So it's really key in the Scrum idea is getting the work done in your sprint planning. So we're planning our sprint. We are going to get this done in the 2 weeks, and we don't want to like work ourselves to death. We need to be realistic. Okay, so planning stage. Next, we go into our sprint. And basically during the sprint, we're just going to be working on the tasks that we have outlined. And if you watch the Kanban board, it's basically like a Kanban board. We are going to take individual tasks and we are going to work on those tasks and get them done. And then we move it to done, or we move it to review, whatever needs to be done. So that's what's happening in that period. We're working. But every day, and this is a really critical part of Scrum, we have a daily check-in. It's only 15 minutes. This isn't about having endless meetings, but it's a daily check-in, and the whole team gets together. Beforehand it would be in person, but now it's probably, virtually. And it's way, way better if this is in person, live. So not like over, email or something. You need that interaction. And during the daily check-in, each team member says, what am I working on? What did I work on yesterday? What am I working on today? And what are the blocks? And then move on. And the reason this is so critical is you want to identify any blocks and solve those. You don't solve it in the check-in. Basically, the person running this is sort of writing that down, and at the end they say, hey, this was your block. Who do you need to solve that? Those 2 people go solve that, and then boom. So you're not allowing these blocks to sort of build up for the team. And then at the end of that, you have something you can show off, and you show it to your end user. And the definition of the end user will depend on kind of what you're doing during the sprint. When I go to the practical side and show an example of a mini sprint, you'll see that kind of how that plays out. Okay. So there are 3 key roles in a Scrum. Obviously, there are the developers, the people who are actually working. But one of the reasons that Scrum really works is that there are 2 other roles within the team. One person's job is to be working on the backlog of work and getting it ready over the 2 weeks so that when the next sprint comes, the next things that are at the top of the list are ready. And as the first planning goes on and people are they're talking about the next things coming, it's going to be clear that there's some uncertainties about, oh, wow, wait a second, we've got some things to figure out before we're going to be able to do the next bit of work. And it's the job of the person in charge of that to get that done. They may be working with different end users, showing people things, that's kind of it's a different job to figure out what has to be done. So they're dedicated to that. Then there's this thing called the Scrum Master. And basically, the Scrum Master, you can think of that like a team coach. It is their job to make sure the team stays quote unquote agile. So the team needs to be having these daily check-ins. They need to be communicating. So if you have like, okay, I'll give you a concrete example. So the daily check-in, somebody says, hey, I worked on this yesterday and I'm going to work on this today. And there's like, remember the Kanban board I showed? I'm going to show you there's like a Scrum board that's going to be up that's showing what everyone's doing. And you look and like the board doesn't have their work. It doesn't say where they're at. Like the task that they wrote up, they didn't really communicate what they're doing and what part they're working on. So they're not communicating with the team. And so the Scrum Master is going to help them like, say, hey, you need to make sure your tasks are on there. If somebody says, oh yeah, I was working on this and I just can't solve this. I don't know. I'm going to keep working on that. So the Scrum Master is like, whoa, wow, this person is blocked and they're getting tunnel focus. I need to help this person widen up, get their head out of the sand and talk with some other people. Instead of just banging on the same problem, I got to help them out. So it might be that. Or it may be, a team's like, God, we're really stuck. We don't know how to solve this. And the Scrum Master is thinking, okay, I'm gonna start talking with some other people and see if I can find out who can help you or what you need to get past this barrier. So that's a really, really unique role in this, making sure the whole process is going smoothly. In small teams, a team member may play the role of developer and Scrum Master, but they have to be really careful and not expect that they can be fully as productive as they would be if they were playing developer role. The people who play these roles, it's not like they're special people. They often come from the development team. Well, product owner, not necessarily. That may be, somebody like a program manager for us or something. But definitely Scrum Master may come from the development team. They just have to put on a different hat. There are 5 events, and I've kind of already gone over them. We have a planning, then we have the sprint where we're working. We have these daily check-ins. And then at the end, the sprint review, what that's referring to is you show it to your end user. And again, I said your end user, don't think of that as like the final end user. Your sprint may be you're working on something for the team. You're trying to there's some critical internal code for this package you're working on, our package, and the sprint's about fixing that. In that case, the end user is the team. And so when you review, you all come together and you have now a working thing. You can kind of test it out within the team. So that might be an example of review. In other cases, it's somebody outside the team. You're creating a data product. You show them a preliminary version so you can get some input. And then lastly, and this is a key thing, this is key with all these agile philosophies, is that we have a retrospective about the workflow. How are we doing in terms of our work? So we don't try to get the workflow perfect right from the beginning. The perfect is the enemy of making forward progress. We do the best we can, and then we're going to talk about how things went. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Then there are things called 3 artifacts. Again, I'm using the jargon that you'll see in Scrum. I think some of these are a little humorous, like artifacts. Who came up with that? But anyhow, this is what they call it. And so these are the product backlog, which is the list of all the things that you need to do over the length of the product. Then what you're going to do in the next 2 weeks. And then what you're going to produce in the next 2 weeks. So those are the 3 things. Now, in talking with people who actually do this in their work, they say these things are really important, but actually there are 2 other things that they say are actually more important. That is, first off, the Scrum board. What is going on? So remember, Scrum is a 2-week period of work We don't want to get lost in the huge, big project. We're focused on the next 2 weeks. And the board is showing what our story is the in software development. These are what they call their task. They call them user stories. I'll show that in a moment. So they have these tasks that they're doing, and then they have subtasks to get this thing done. It's going to have a series of other tasks. And so they show as they're going along, and they're figuring out this story during the sprint, they're going to add tasks here. So it's not going to be clear right from the beginning of the sprint what the tasks are going to be, but they know what they're working on. And then they kind of figure out, and as they figure it out, they may add task here. And then people will pick the task off and say, hey, okay, I'm working on that. And then when it's done, I'm going to move done. So this is when they do the daily check-in. The Scrum Master is looking at this and they're like, hey, Eli, what are you up to? Like, it doesn't really match what you're saying here. And then your task is completely vague. Like, you need to be more specific about what exactly you're working on here. Okay, so this board is super important to it. And then secondly, these user stories. So these tasks are really important. An interesting thing is, like, whenever you watch video, read books, anything about Scrum, you're going to hear user stories. Although if you go to the original development of this and read the book that the developer wrote on Scrum, user stories never appear. This is something that came out of the software development industry's use of Scrum, and they realized that this was really important for them, and it helped them get clarity on what they're doing and to develop tasks that are independent and are not like blocked by other tasks. So I'm going to show you what a user story is, but just be clear, don't get too hung up on this because other applications of Scrum don't necessarily use this framework. But we can learn a lot from the software industry's experience with Scrum. So these user stories, it's about a 1 to 3 day chunk of work. So it's not huge, but it's not tiny. The tiny ones are the task. And we're asking, okay, who is this task for? We need to be clear on that. Maybe it's for the team. Maybe you're developing some internal function, and so it's for the something internal. Maybe it's something that's it's for the data team. We need to figure out like all the different columns that we're going to use across these different data sources and do some like harmonizing. So that's kind of, it's for the data team. What are we producing? So we don't want to be vague. Like, what are we doing? And then why are we doing this? And then, really important, what is the definition of done? We don't want to get stuck in just like endless work and making things perfect here when they don't need to be for what we're working on now. So we need to decide and agree on what is done. Here's a nice video on creating effective stories. You'll see examples when I show you my little sprint. This is a really common card of what it might look like. Just give you some ideas. Again, you're going to have to decide for you what what works for you. The key thing is the clarity, definition of done, and then who are you doing this for, and what are you doing? Epics. So epics. So you have an epic, and then you'll have stories. Again, using their jargon. An epic is this larger chunk of related work. And the reason that they use epics is that they're trying to create a hierarchy of work, and it really helps them organize things when they think of it this way. So again, you have a video on that. I'll show you an example when we get to the practical part. Okay, so essential parts of Scrum. And this is, I mentioned this a little bit, and this is from like talking with people who are in the industry and also like reading a lot. First off, the development team, it's like ideal is 3 to 7 people. So we're not talking 20 people. If you get that big, the team gets too bloated, and this getting the team in a rhythm, it just starts breaking down. So if it's 20 people, you want to rethink what exactly is a team. Clearly they're not all working really intimately together. So you want to break that larger group into sub teams. The daily meeting, like once the team is in a sprint, so you are really working to get something done. Sprint does not mean grinding yourself to the bone. That is not what a sprint means. This isn't like, okay, we've got this pressing deadline and we have got to just grind and get it done. That's not the meaning of a sprint. A sprint is a time-boxed set of work. That's what a sprint is. It is time box, meaning, okay, in 2 weeks, we are going to get this set of work done. We'll commit to getting this done. Hey, if we get through all those tasks, we may pull in some new tasks, but we're not going to do that until we get this set of work done. So during the sprint, these daily check-ins are really important to keep the team high functioning. And it's really interesting when you read the books. What a fascinating aspect of this is that people say that, and friends who are in this, they say that the team begins to get into a rhythm, and this daily check-in at the same time every day helps the team get into a rhythm, and it starts working faster and getting things done more collaboratively and quicker. So they say that's really key. And I've also had friends who said, yeah, they have done it sometimes where they did 3 sessions over video and then 2 over like Slack or email or something. And they said, I mean, it works if you have to, but if you're really trying to get the benefit, it's way better to do it in person. So if you're going to try this out with your team, I would definitely experiment with the in-person ideas. And see what you think. The Scrum Master. You need somebody whose job it is to just kind of keep the team on track. That's not their whole thing. It doesn't have to be their whole thing, but you do want that role. Otherwise, it's just the nature of people and people working on things. We just slowly tunnel vision, and we stop being collaborative, stop, working together. So someone has to take that role. And then these short iterations of work. This is probably the most important thing next to this daily Scrum is, you don't want to have, okay, we're going to do, a quarter of work. That just creates problems for the team. And then lastly, this retrospective to improve your process. I'm going to show that by demonstration. Okay, so that was a whirlwind of what it looks like. Let's jump in and run a little sprint with GitHub. And I'm going to show you an example of a little sprint that I ran. And I want to note about this that there's something rather critical missing in what I'm showing you. It's missing the Scrum part of Scrum. So the Scrum is that daily check-in where they say, you do that daily check-in and the team just starts getting in a groove and really working. That's the great thing about Scrum. But, when you're learning something, I think it's really good to like get practice with it in kind of a contained and sort of safe way. So if you practice with yourself, you're going to get good at it, and you don't have to like stumble over all the things when you start trying to apply this as a team. So that's one thing. Secondly, you get a lot of the advantages of Agile from doing this, even for just as a solo person. So if we look at Agile, it has these 4 elements. Well, okay, you're not doing the self-organizing part because you are doing it solo, but you're getting these other 3 parts, and that's really critical. So I would say try it out. See if it works for you. Okay, so let's jump on. And what I'm going to show you is a sprint I did for this project. The background here is this is a R package that we use to a team that I'm part of used to well, I mean, actually the data package is for our team. It's not really for the public. So we archive our data on a different database. It's up here. It's called the SPS. But for all our reports, we need to have the data coming into another R package that does our analysis, and then that goes into our Markdown. And so this data package is for us. But it's also potentially useful for other people who would like to use the data and use it in R, or use it. I mean, it doesn't have to be R. They could use it in anything. It's a way you can just like call up the data, download it, and start using it. And it's what's called analysis ready data. Like, you don't have to do anything with it, especially if you're programming in R. You just install the package and then load data, and now you have it, and you can just start running. So this sprint was for a talk I was giving to the coordinated assessments, and these are the people who develop and collect and input the data that are going into this package. So they are way upstream. So it's kind of a it's kind of a specific end user. It's not the target end user, but this group, might find this useful. So for this sprint, I had to first define what exactly I'm going to be doing. So I had this target. In 2 weeks, I'm going to give this talk. So that made it pretty clear. I know really clear what the end user is. So now, okay, and now I'm starting my sprint. I'm starting the sprint planning. So I've got to back up. What am I doing? Who am I doing this for? So that's the conversation I'm having with myself. What am I going to be doing in this sprint? Okay, here's the end user. I identify who I'm doing this for. And next, I have to think about, okay, how much work can I get done? So here's my project backlog. It's not very fancy, but for this project, it's kind of good enough. I just want the outline of what's happening. This is, I'm in the last stages of a much bigger project. All the backlog that's been completed is not on here. I'm just doing the polishing phases of getting this 2020 data package. So it's pretty functional, but I'm sort of improving some things. So these are kind of the last few things that I need to do. And so I decide all I really need to do is, yeah, okay, that'd be nice for the data documentation, but honestly, for these end users, what I really need to do is I need to make sure if they go on and they click on their population of interest, it's all working and all the references are there. So I don't want to get in this situation where somebody, in this case, it'd probably be Puget Sound, clicks on in there and it's all like blank. I'm like, oh, no. Okay, so now I've kind of decided what I want to focus on. Now I write this part. So this is getting my head wrapped around exactly what I'm trying to get done. So as a member, who's the user? As a member of the, blah, blah, a monitoring working group, contributor to the coordinated assessments, I want to be able to look up and download the raw data and sources for populations so I can see where the data came from, including the coordinated assessment sources. I want to do this so I can compare raw counts to my own data and I can see where there are gaps. So now by writing this story, which really didn't take me too long, I have really clarified in my head what I'm about to do, and that is going to keep me on task. I've got a ton of different things to do. If I get distracted, like others, this isn't my only project. I can devote certain amount of time, and I've got to get on task in order to complete this workable product, and I can show that in the 2 weeks. So now once I've done this, I can start to think about, okay, what are the subtasks are going to be involved. So the way that I'm doing this now in this planning stage is I now start breaking things out in stories. And notice the way that I have done it here. I call this an E for epic, and this is really going to help. And then I do these tasks here, and I'm going to call them S. I numbered them, and later in my retrospective, I thought, oh my God, that was a hassle. So I don't do that anymore. But I do the S1, and 1 is referring to the epic. So I know all these stories have to do with this epic. And let's watch how this looks. So if you haven't done this before, so I'm in an issue. So this epic is an issue. And I do hyphen, square bracket, space, square bracket. And then I can say, you know, S1 new story and update it. So when I was writing it, I just did it like this. I was just thinking out loud. And then when I'm ready, yeah, that's good. I go roll over and I go here and I convert to an issue. And so I convert all these to issues. Okay, so done with planning. Now I'm ready to actually get going. And now this is the completed sprint board, and this is what I'm going to show you how I created. Let's, hey, there we go. Okay, so now I've planned. Now I'm ready to get going. Now I'm going to make my sprint board. So I want to go onto the repository. I'm not doing a board at the org level because this sprint is really only about this particular repository. So I go here. I'm going to use classic just because I don't need this cross organization feature. So I'm going to say new. And then this is my sprint 1. Actually, I gave it the date name, but I'm going to call this this. Let's just create a template. Do I want a template? No. Yeah, basic Kanban will work. Okay, great. Okay, so I hesitated to do the basic Kanban because it always throws these notes up here and then I have to delete them. And I always have to decide if I want to do that or just create my own columns. Okay, so what do I have here? Okay, so I'm going to have to edit this. So first thing I need to know is my sprint backlog. These are all the tasks I'm going to get done. And then I'm going to pull things off of that into here. Okay, okay. So now what I need to do is I need to, come here. Sorry, me and WebEx are fighting here. Okay. So now I'm over here and now I want to add cards. Now you see the advantage of me labeling my stories by the S1 because there's a lot of things here. And I need to find all the ones that are S1. So let's start off, let's just put the epic at the front so I can keep that in focus. And now I'm going to put all my S1s that I did in my planning over here. And I can just, they're so easy to find. Do you notice, I don't know if you noticed at the top, I had to change the filtering. I did that kind of quickly there. You normally won't have to do that. I had to because I'm grabbing tasks that I completed, and by default, it only shows the open ones. But I mean, normally you wouldn't be pulling closed task in. I only have to because I'm showing you a real sprint here. Okay. Did I get them all? I think I got them all. Miscellaneous cleanup. Okay, good. Yeah, so I just kind of put all the tasks in there. Okay, great. So, boy, done. I don't know why it does this sometimes. It's not showing my done column here. It's very strange, but hopefully I'll find it in a moment. Okay, so now I'm working. And basically all you're doing is you're doing one task at a time. So this is a key thing. You don't want to get fall into the temptation of multitasking. Is lots of work have shown that if you do that, you actually get slower. That time between like having your head wrapped around a task and then trying to spin up to another one, you feel like, oh yeah, I'm being, more productive, but so much research has shown that no, actually that spin up time is really killing you. So in the software development, they tried to stop that by forcing themselves to work on a task, and they decide what they're working on. So I decided this is what I need to work on first. This isn't too overwhelming, so it's pretty clear to me what things I need to work on first, but I can just sort of scan here and figure out that maybe I want to have blocked. Like if I get stuck and I need to do something, I want to have that there. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now I'm just, working on this, and I really don't know why my done column, I'm not going to attempt to figure out why it is doing this to me while I'm lecturing. Instead, I'm just going to, hey, come on, edit. It's not happy with me because I'm trying to rename things. Update column. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to work, and then I'm going to finish this task, and you can see how I can go here, I can click on it because that's an issue. It shows up here, and these are the tasks that I decided I needed to do to finish that. You'll also notice here, if I can go to the issue for the full details. However, this really has all you need to see here. If I were working with somebody and we're communicating, I would go to the issue and we'd have all our comments as we're trying to, work on that, and I can tag each other so they see that I've got a question for them. All the information about that task is going to be there. So I would click there if I need to do that. For me, all I really needed was to think about, okay, what do I need to do here, and put those tasks in there. And the reason I wanted to do this, again, I really need to focus on getting this done and not doing more than I need to do. So did that. So as I get done, I move that over to done. I'm done. And then I decide a next one. What do I want to do? Okay, well, I definitely don't want to do that. I definitely don't want to do that. Oh, I just finished that. Okay, so now I'm gonna work on that. So I'm just gonna be like doing that, and I'll finish it up. And then here, maybe I get blocked and I'm like, I can't do that because I need something else. So I'm gonna put it over into blocked, and I'll add a note. So now I can see that it's blocked, and I don't want it to stay there too long. So I'll write there what it is that I need to do to unblock it. So let's see, I'm here, and I can say, here's what I need to do. Update. And the idea here is you're really trying to think about trying to be organized so that you can help yourself solve the problems. If you try to just stick that in your head, well, oh yeah, I know what I need to do to get that done. Well, you could do that, but then that whole spin up time to try to remember exactly what you needed to do, that really wastes a lot of time. So being a little bit disciplined here and saying what is you're blocked on, why is it over and blocked, is going to help you get that unblocked. So now, I just keep moving along, trucking through this, and I'm not going to pull in new tasks. This is a key thing of the sprint. We're not going to be dragging in new things. We have decided what we need to get done in this sprint, and we are going to complete those tasks before we pull in new things. Now, if you decide, oh, hey, to do this, I'm going to have to do something else. Okay, then you might have to add something, but really you're just adding something so you can do this. And you want to be very careful that you're not running down a rabbit hole and doing something you don't actually need to do for this sprint. So we just keep walking through. All right, okay, so hopefully that's pretty self-evident. I think this key feature for me is creating these as issues by making those little task things and then rolling over. So, here I have all of these. I can't do it here, but it's I go to the issue and you see if I roll over anything like here, it's going to show up here. Let's look at that markdown code again, because this is a really time-saving feature. Anytime you use this hyphen, space, square, you're going to get a checkbox. And you can either just check it off. That's great. It's going to show you one task done. And you can quickly turn it into an issue. Okay. So now I have finished all my tasks and I am ready for my presentation. So the last step is let's go back here. Okay, the working increment of the product. I did all my tasks. I now have something I can show to the coordinated assessment folks. I know they're going to click on their data and it's going to show everything. I checked that, and that is the only thing I was working on during this sprint. And now I can show it to them and I can get some feedback as I watch how they interact with it. And then I can make some notes, and rather than just having those lost in notes somewhere, I can put those in an issue so I have that in the record for this. Okay, and after I am done, I do my retrospective. How to run a retrospective is that's such a big area, and you can study that a lot. But I will say that, one of these key features of this agile way of doing things is, as I said, not getting hung up on perfect, but rather using the cycles to continually improve your learning about how you do things. And then during the retrospective, you think about how you're doing things and how you might do things better. And this is, you're really focusing on the process. So you might, say, okay, hey, I'm just going to do a retrospective, and then the next one I'll think about whether that retrospective was really useful. Okay. So I start here. It's just a really simple retrospective, and I think about, okay, so what are some of the things that didn't work so well? Okay, so one, my stories were not proper user stories. In fact, it was my epic that was a user story, and the rest were more like task. Well, it seemed to work for me, but user stories are something that's used a lot. So maybe I should try next time. I'll try to make my stories a little more like the classic user stories they use in software development. I'm going to try that out and see whether I like that, see if that's working for me. Secondly, my review. I did present it to end users, but I didn't get actual feedback. It was the nature of the presentation. And I think that actually I'd learn more about like how people interact with this if I were able to watch people interact with it. So maybe what I'd like to do in the review is get my team members before I give the talk, and maybe if I did a dry run of that talk and I just watched somebody interact with it, that would be a way to do that. And I do a dry run too. So, okay, yeah, I could do that. Great. And my retrospective, well, honestly, I feel kind of lost here. I think I'd like to watch some more videos and read some more about this, just to get a little better about how I might organize this and how I might do better self-coaching. Okay, so that's a real world example of my retrospective there and how I might go about and do it differently. The other thing that I'll say, I found this super, super useful for completing a task, really a time box task. And I don't know if I do all my work in these kind of sprints. I will be doing it when I'm working with a team, but a lot of my work is solo. So I don't know if I would always, use all this for just like my regular work, but definitely I think it's super useful for any teamwork that I'm doing. Okay, and with that, the last slide here. On the beginning, I show things that are really entry level. These are things that I'm reading now that I found really fascinating. This one is the classic one. It will not teach you Scrum. Fascinating story about how these ideas developed. This guy was a Vietnam pilot, and then when he got out of that, he went used the GI Bill to go to school, got a PhD. Then he started working in cancer research, and through a lot of different iterations, ended up in software development. It's really interesting story. And this is the one I'm reading right now. It's another one that's considered a classic. And this is by a really talented team coach and lots of good insights from her work with teams. Okay, great. Well, let's open it up here. Let me grab the chat here. Expand panel. Here we go. Come back, chat. No, not that. I have to find the chat. Those of you who work with WebEx will feel my pain here. Where did the chat box go? Come on. Ah, there it is. Great, great, great. Okay. Yep. So feel free to either throw things in the chat or unmute yourself, ask any questions or comments on this. Oh, actually, another comment. If you get into running this for a team, so in the software industry, Jira is pretty much what everyone uses. You definitely can do this with other platforms, but that's the big one. I will say though that, again, remember that this is lightweight. You don't need a special application to do this. I mean, you could just do this just up on a whiteboard for sure. And then for many projects, the GitHub project boards are going to be definitely sufficient. Okay, questions, comments, anyone there? I know I've got some friends on there. You guys can unmute and, or if somebody else has tried this before.
I would just voice out loud a question in the chat from Jennifer.
Yeah,
Do you have a
see that.
board that tracks epics?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes, definitely. So normally you would have a board that tracks epics. And so for a bigger project that, like, within Scrum, you have a person who's dedicated to developing that project backlog. So it's going to be something, it could be on here. Okay, the reason I paused is I think that probably when you're doing your project backlog, you're going to want to use the new project boards because as you can see, this worked okay for the sprint backlog because it was pretty short. Your actual project backlog is going to be absolutely enormous. You're going to have different classes of things. And that's where that project beta and being able to put things into tables. Let's see if I have an example here. That is not a good example. This is way too small. So last week I showed an example of a much bigger one. You can imagine you have hundreds of tasks, and then you can do all kinds of filtering on, you can have different columns here, you can have different labels. So that's where you're going to want to be developing that project backlog. And what you're going to want to do also is you're going to want to sort by urgency or time. What needs to be done now? So and that's going to depend on what you're doing. You know, maybe you do that by month. These are all the things that have to get done in June. These are all the things in July. Or it may be just things that are on fire. You know, a big machine, critical machine in the lab is broken. Well, that is suddenly the top fire. And then what you do once you kind of sorted them out where, okay, these are more things we're going to work on later, as a project owner working on the backlog, you're going to go into these. So imagine these are your big epics, your big tasks, and you're going to go in there and you start, you know, fine tuning them, breaking them into user stories. Yes. So long answer to yes, Jennifer, definitely you're going to have a board for the epics and do that on the project board beta. Okay. Yeah, okay. Catherine said, yeah, it's introducing the epic topic. Yeah, I did the same thing, a checklist of issues. So one of the nice things I think about the epic is that, and you saw that example where here, this epic, yes, it do have the checklist, but I made them into issues and I gave them a name so I know what epic is associated with. But it really helped think of it as an epic and think about, okay, what is this task about? It really helped me wrap my head around a whole series of tasks, these stories that were associated with this bigger thing that I needed to do. I put a nice, let me see, I think right here, epics. Did I put the link? Yes. If you go on to the epic slide, this is a nice video on what's an epic and how to, and give you some ideas of how to design those, how to structure them.
Eli, this is Josh. I wondered if you could take a moment and talk about how Agile in general, but also just the Scrum approach has been received in your experience in kind of the NIMPS leadership hierarchy, because that's a very different way of working. You know, I think last week a couple of us were in a side chat talking about how NIMPS is sometimes can be an overwhelming waterfall and not so agile. But it does seem like, you know, like I think there's a lot of enthusiasm to adopt some of these things from a bottom up, but we kind of, you know, how do we defend our time in the agency? How do we communicate what we're trying to do kind of up the chain so that we can make space to do some of these new approaches?
So working on this is the first time that I have taught this, and it came out of all our OpenScapes cohorts where people were mentioning, hey, we need some help with project management. And I realized, you know what? this is about a year ago. Like, you know what? I actually don't know a lot about project management. So spent a lot of time learning and then talking with my friends in the software development field. And through that, realized that, it really became ubiquitous in software development. But what's happening right now is there's much more talking about using Scrum outside of that industry. It's now kind of broken out of that, and it's really spreading. So I will also note that, watching what happened in software, I think we can say that this is a viral idea, that it is so much better of a way to do things, and it's lightweight. So it's, you can see it's not that hard, really. But once teams start using it, it just becomes a habit, and they see how much better they're working, and so they just start to adopt it. So my thinking here is that my goal is to start, we have to help ourselves, and we start training and trying this out. And, so this workshop is beginning. I'm now going to be involved in some hack weeks where I start to try it out with some real teams. And then I want to, start, I'm trying it out this summer with some interns that I'm working with. And then the goal is that I think when we do our big fall cohorts that we're doing, these are, for those of you who don't know, we're doing OpenScapes cohorts across all the centers except Northeast. We can have some like optional sessions where we do some practice, and then some teams, hey, let's just try it out and let's start doing it. I think that once we do that, then we're going to, well, I think we just keep pushing on leadership. Look, we need this support. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to learn how much of these concepts are taught in the various leadership training that, program leads, directors, and supervisors get. Because I think that may also be some of it is just making sure that our supervisors understand some of this jargon and these ideas, so that when we say we're going to have a sprint week or we're going to do a scrum, they immediately know what we're talking about and understand the benefits.
Yeah, I would guess they're not exposed to this. Just like, I wasn't exposed to this. If I'd gotten a degree in computer science in the last 10 years, 100%, I would have been exposed to this. My interns are coming from computer science. Yes, they have classes in this. This is the way you do projects. So, yeah. But I think the ideas are really compelling, and they start from where you can start from where you are, basically.
Looking in the chat, it looks like Rod had a quick question.
Okay, yeah.
If you want to unmute Rod.
Yeah, hi Eli, thanks. And Josh kind of started off for me, but there's kind of a little bit of organic growth going in NIML here. From, like Josh says, there's a side chat every once in a while, and I guess if you could give us one tip to start, just some little nugget that could spark and a start. Give us a start. Where do we start?
So I think that for whenever you're learning a new skill, you're trying new things, try a small piece first. So for me, I've started with, okay, I had this talk to give. I'm going to do it like a sprint. And that means I'm going to plan a time box set of work. I'm going to decide exactly what I'm trying to get done. And I'm going to really work on being realistic about what I can get done in the actual time I have. So I'm not going to pretend that I have 40 hours over the next 2 weeks to work on this. I didn't have that much time. I can break it down, thinking about how much time I really have. And then, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And so organizing that and then getting used to some of the just logistics about using these project boards, using issues with the tasks that you put into sort of user stories. Just getting used to that kind of eases it in. So for me, that's what I started with. I think for another team, like you might start with, okay, let's start with trying to check in. We are about to go out to the field. We are in hyper work mode, trying to get stuff done. Let's try a daily check-in for a week and see what happens. So during this daily check-in, you pick a time each week, each day, and it's 15 minutes. You say, what did I work on yesterday to help us with our goal, which is we are going to field on July 4th. We have to have the boat ready, so you all know what you're all working on. It's not like the entire program. It's the core people who are attempting to do this one thing. Okay, what did I do yesterday to help us? What am I doing today? Where am I blocked? And one person is your note taker. And you're posting this on a Google Drive sheet. And we go around the room, and that's what we say, and say, and then yay team, you split up. Those people who are blocked on something, somebody else, may say, oh, hey, I'll get to you on that. I know what you need there, whatever, right? And you just try that and get used to doing that. See what that feels like, how that changes how well the team works. So that's one aspect that you might try. Or you might say, okay, let's try a retrospective. So break it down. Take one piece and try that, whichever piece feels most useful to you now.
Can I throw an idea out at you?
Yeah.
I know we're over, and I don't want to keep dragging people on here, but we were just talking in the side chat kind of how we have a solo mentality, the way our plans are written and all that. And so people seem to be liking what's going on here. And what I'm kind of thinking is that could treat this maybe as accountability partners, where, like Josh said, when you say sprint week, what's that mean? What I'm wondering is if we're not going to have all the tools in place, but we can put something together as a group, whether it's their solo projects or not, whereas you do the actions that the team would do, but you're talking about your piece that you set up for that week, something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, it's good stuff, but like Josh says, you got to not let it get stale. So I'm just trying to figure a way forward that as our teams grow and things like that.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Eli. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I can keep talking. I'm on here till, 10:15 at least. I think for me, where I'm at right now is like really trying to get myself out of like, here's the whole project, and I'm just gonna like tackle this by, working ahead and taking off just keep doing like this. Okay. Like, sort of the quote unquote salami style of getting work done. Hey, that works. That's great. But what this is saying is, okay, let's add a little piece to that. Have something workable, a workable product in short iterations. So like I'm trying to learn like how to teach this. So my workable products have been, okay, at the end of these 2 weeks, I am going to record a short video on something. That's one example. Or, I have something. So it's not just like this endless work. I'm going to do something and show something. That's kind of a difference with this. Another thing that I'm trying, so I find the check-ins awkward and a little terrifying to think about, to be perfectly honest. I love them and I would love to be part of it, but me organizing and telling people to check in feels a little weird. and a little scary. So I realized, okay, that's something all my friends who are in software, they say it's super important. So I'm going to start with my summer interns because they don't know any better, right? They don't know if that this isn't just a normal thing. They're actually used to it. And so I'll be able to, get practice in a really safe way for me. And then I'll get better. I'll figure out, okay, what's good about the check-in, when do I like to go on and on, just like I'm doing right now. And so I'll have to learn, how do I shut up during these check-ins?
Yeah, Eli, I was talking the other day with my neighbor across the street who runs a big team at Amazon, and they call it their stand-ups.
Yeah,
Is
stand
kind
up.
of
Yeah.
what they do every day. And he was saying how like it is just the culture is it is unacceptable for those stand-ups to go more than 15 minutes. But it's just not the way things are done. And if you want to talk about something more, then it goes into an issue or it goes into a Slack conversation or something like that that keeps the project moving forward. But the stand-ups are about where are you now? What are you working on today? What's blocking you?
Yeah.
And it's just, but it took a while for the culture to get to the point where more than 15 minutes is unacceptable.
Yeah.
To the point where a supervisor is embarrassed if it goes for more than 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's fascinating about this is, like, everything I've read is people say that it has this magical effect on the team. Like, it's only 15 minutes, but the team begins to get into a rhythm and they get synchronized, and it just somehow it really influences the team flow. I'm sure, like, social scientists, are studying like why it is that these daily check-ins in person have such an enormous effect.
I guess I'm wondering if it if it works as well with a very small team, so maybe by just learning how to do it. If there's a lot of heterogeneity in how much time people are putting into this particular project, like you mentioned, summer interns. Like I'm wondering how much it needs to be kind of equal. Everybody is kind of working the same amount of energy on this project, because I feel like the hardest part for me would be knowing what was a reasonable task for 2 weeks. And that's usually, I feel like most of my revisiting what went wrong was probably in that department. But anyway, I guess I just wanted to, because I guess I feel like in the meetings I have sometimes like, well, still working on the same task, still working on the same task, still working on the same task.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay, first comment with that thing you just said, still working on the same task, still working on the same task. So that is where the Scrum Master steps in and starts helping out. So that's clearly a situation where somebody, there's something going on with their user story or their task because it's way too big, and they should be able to get through it in 1 or 2 days. So clearly the task has to be small. So maybe your task there is actually an epic. So epics can take multiple sprints to get through. So now what the Scrum Master is going to do, okay, so I see that you've been stuck here for a while, where, and it's kind of guiding you to figure out how to break that up so that you can start completing tasks. This completing task part of it is really important too, because as you see that you're completing task, just get more and more on a roll, and it's just less of the time spent like, oh, what am I doing, where am I going, and yeah, etc. So that was that. Oh, and then right, like, how long do things take? I did not go into the whole aspect of Scrum, which is about getting the size of task. Figuring out how much a team can actually complete within a sprint is something really important within the software industry. So they have lots of ideas about how you size task. In order to do that, you have to be able to write your story cards. And when you're starting, I think you won't have the skill to do that very well. I certainly am not skilled enough to really write good cards yet. But once you get better, then you can write a card where other people can look at that and people can say, okay, that's a 1. They use the Fibonacci series. 1, 1, 2, oh god, what is it? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, that. So up like that. So this is a teeny task. This is a medium task. This is a huge task. And everybody votes on that. And then they take the average of what they think. And if there are people who are way different, one person says, hey, that's, tiny. Another person says, oh my God, that's going to take forever. The Scrum Master says, all right, you two get together, figure out why are you on different sides here? And then, talk about that. So maybe the person who says it's going to take forever knows something the other person doesn't, for example. So, but I think that over time, you get better at writing the task cards and you start to figure out how long something really takes.